What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you some camera tips and tricks for the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2022. Now, if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review and other tips and tricks videos for it on the channel. And for the latest up-to-date pricing, check out the link in the video description because this is always changing. But with that being said, let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to show you is two different ways to open the camera itself. Now, of course, opening the camera from the home screen is easy enough. Hitting the camera app obviously really isn't that hard. But say you're doing something else on your phone, maybe you're on an app or something like that, there are actually a couple different camera shortcuts on this phone that make it a lot more convenient. The first one is probably the most straightforward, and that's double pressing the power key like this. And as you can see, the camera opens right up. So if you're on an app or something like that, all you gotta do is double press the power key. It's gonna open the camera. But that being said, while this camera shortcut is a real nice thing to have, it's actually not active by default, so let me show you how to set it up. What we're gonna do is go to Settings. From here, go to System. From this menu, go to Gestures. Go to double press power key. And as you can see, I do have mine set to launch camera, but by default, it is gonna be set to launch assistant. So of course, you're gonna wanna change it, and then the shortcut should work just fine. Now, the second camera shortcut is a feature called Quick Capture. This feature allows you to open your camera using just a simple gesture. So again, we are in the gestures menu right now. Now, unlike the first shortcut, this feature is actually set up by default, so you won't technically need to do anything. But if for whatever reason it's not working on your phone, this is where you're gonna go to turn it on. So from the gestures menu, go to Quick Capture. Again, as you can see, it is on right now. And with this feature, all you need to do to turn on your camera is go like this. And as you can see, the camera opens right up. Now, if you're using it for the first time, it may take a little getting used to, but once you get the hang of the motion, it's actually really easy. So let's try this off the home screen. As you can see, opens right up. So those are two different shortcuts that are really useful if you want to quickly and conveniently access your camera. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to use your ultrawide camera. So we're on the main camera screen right now, as you can see. And to get to the ultrawide camera, all you have to do is hit the 0.5 right here. And as you can see, we got a much wider angle. So if you're trying to get a picture of scenery, maybe a picture of a building, something where you want to fit a lot more content into the frame, the ultrawide camera can definitely come in handy. And then when you're done with the ultrawide camera and you want to go back to normal, just hit the 1 and it's going to go right back. Now, hitting the 0.5 is basically automatically going to take it to the widest angle possible, but maybe you want a slightly wider angle without actually going all the way to 0.5. Well, with this phone, unlike some other phones in this price range, you actually can do that. All you need to do is pinch out like this. And as you can see, we're at 0.9x right now. Can go out further, all the way to 0.5. And again, if you want to go back to normal, you can either hit the 1 or just zoom back in. Now I'm going to show you the macro camera, which is pretty much the complete opposite feature. So to get to the macro camera, the icon is actually right next to the ultrawide camera. Right here, hit the flower icon. And now we are in macro mode. So one thing to keep in mind, when you're taking a macro photo, be sure you're actually close enough to the subject, otherwise it's not going to show up right. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to change the aspect ratio of your photos. So right now we are in the default setting, which is 3:4 or 4:3 if you're in landscape mode. But we got several different options here. So if we go up here where it says 3:4, tap on this icon. Now we're in 9:16, or again 16:9 if you're in landscape mode. And this is going to be great for video thumbnails, for example, and stuff where you want a wider and more narrow angle. And then if we tap it again, we're going to be in full, which is basically the entire aspect ratio of the phone itself, which in the case of this phone is 20.5:9. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to mute your shutter sound. Now, when you're taking photos and you're not in mute mode, your camera is going to make a noise. Now, honestly, in my opinion, the noise from this camera is really not bad at all. Not half as bad as some of the other cameras out there. But still, if you're taking a lot of photos, the shutter sound can get a little annoying. So muting it is really simple. All you're going to do is go to Settings. From here, go to Capture Settings. And shutter sound, as you can see, is on by default. So we're going to toggle this off. And now if we go back to the camera, take a picture, and there's no sound. Now keep in mind, if you have your phone muted, this is completely irrelevant because it won't make a sound regardless. But if you do have your sound on or you're in vibrate, that's what you're going to have to do to mute the shutter. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to change the quality of your videos. Now with this phone, unfortunately, we only really have one resolution, and that is 1080p, so there's no 4K or anything like that. But luckily, we can actually change the frame rate. By default, it is going to be 30 frames per second, which is pretty much the standard. But if you want smoother clips, or maybe you want to do slow motion, something like that, we actually do have an option to use 60 frames per second instead. So to do this, first things first, we're going to go to video mode. Then from here, we're going to go to the top right next to the aspect ratio, tap on the icon that says 30. And as you can see, we're now at 60 frames per second. So when you're recording videos, it's going to be a little bit smoother. And if you're doing slow motion or something like that, it tends to look a lot better when you record the video at 60 frames per second. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to make your videos a little bit more space efficient. Now keep in mind, this phone does have 256 gigabytes of internal storage, and there's micro SD card expansion as well. And since we're limited to 1080p anyway, so you're not going to be shooting 4K videos or anything like that, this is really only going to be useful if you're constantly recording videos, especially if your videos tend to be on the longer side. Otherwise, you can always do this to save space, but it's not really absolutely necessary. But that being said, what we're going to do is go to settings. From here, go to the video dropdown and turn on efficient videos. Basically what this does is changes the files of your videos to HEVCs, and compared to the typical MP4s, HEVC files take up a little bit less space. Now again, in my experience, with a phone like this that has so much storage as it is, unless you're recording a bunch of longer videos or something like that, this isn't really altogether necessary, but at the same time, if you want to be as efficient as possible, it's definitely an option. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to customize your bottom bar. As you can see down here, there are a bunch of different options here. We got slow motion, video, photo, portrait, pro, and then if we hit the more tab, there are even more options. With this phone, we really do have a ton of different modes to choose from, which is definitely a great thing if you want a wider variety of features, but you can actually customize what shows up down here, and this is going to make the features you use frequently a lot easier to access. So this is really easy to do. All you got to do is go to the more section. From here, press and hold on whatever you want to add. So for example, night vision, press and hold, and simply drag it to the bar down here. And now if I want to remove something, for example, we can do the same thing. So now if we go back to the camera, as you can see, we have night vision down here, but I did remove pro mode. And keep in mind, you can do this with any of these different modes except for photo and video. No matter what you do, those obviously are going to be permanently on this bar. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to turn on your grid lines. To do this, we're going to go to settings. From here, go to capture settings, and right here, toggle on assistive grid. Now if we go back to the camera, the grid lines are here, and it's going to make it a lot easier if you're trying to line something up or center it. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is a feature called Tap Anywhere to Capture. What this does is basically allows you to trigger the shutter simply by tapping anywhere on the screen. So if you're taking a selfie, for example, and you have to use one hand at a slightly awkward angle, it's going to make things a lot easier so you don't need to worry about reaching for the shutter button itself. So to get to this feature, we're going to go to settings. From here, go to capture settings. And right here, where it says tap anywhere to capture, toggle this on. Now if we go back to the camera, you can tap literally anywhere on the screen and it's going to take a photo. Now this feature is really cool, but I personally would only use it if you really need to, because if you're trying to focus on something, for example, it can make things a little difficult if your shutter triggers every single time you touch the screen. But those were some quick camera tips and tricks for the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2022. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And again, if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review and other tips and tricks videos for it on the channel. And for the latest up-to-date pricing, don't forget to check out the link in the video description, because this is always changing. But that's it for this video. As always, I will see you in the next one.